At this point, you may have noticed that Greg and I were on Shark Tank recently. We're actually going to be airing this episode in 2 parts. Right now, Greg and I are recording, and actually we're going to be airing tomorrow night. But by the time that you're watching this, we've already aired. The reason why we're doing it is because we want to show you the 2-week sprint that led up to us being on Shark Tank, and then what happens with our inventory and sales afterwards. So we're going to do pretty much a 2-part series here, and we're going to show you the ins and outs of how this 2-week sprint actually looked. So Greg, dude, this has been an insane couple of weeks for us with the sprint and learning about the news. Like, walk me through that first moment when you found out or read that email that we were going to be on Shark Tank.
Yeah, I mean, what a wild moment that was for us, Wes. I mean, it was a Friday night, almost exactly, 3 weeks before this official air date coming up on Friday. And it was so far out of our minds, right? Because we had filmed so long ago and, we just weren't really sure where things were. But, obviously we got that email. For me, it was 9 p.m. So it was pretty late. You called me, actually, and I was like, why is Wes calling me right now? Like, I talk to you every single day, like 5 times a day. I don't need to hear from Wes right now. But my fiance, Izzy, was like, he's definitely calling you for a reason. I look at my phone, I see an email that says Shark Tank. I'm like, oh my God, you immediately called me right back. And we just hop on the phone and we're like, oh my God, just screaming, celebrating. So it was really quite the moment to, I think, see that news and hear about it, and after it had been so long.
Dude, I literally, that when I called you, I was just getting in the car and I turned on my phone and I just saw the email pop up that said Shark Tank. I didn't even read it, and I literally called you immediately, and I just heard both of us screaming, and then all of a sudden I felt like I blacked out. It was just a lot of yelling for a little bit. We had, Greg and I had worked so hard for so long to get on the show and then air, and it just was a wild moment. But what's so crazy is that as entrepreneurs, when one thing is really high and exciting, you realize that with that comes every other situation that follows. So while Greg and I really enjoyed that night because we could, and it was a fun night to celebrate, we knew that that next morning was going to be an all-out sprint, because they're pretty much like, oh, you're airing in 2 weeks, and our brains were just running. So Greg, that morning that we celebrated that Friday, that Saturday morning, you're the operations guy. What did you have planned out for us that was just going to be tackling for the next 2-week sprint?
I think for both of us, we've experienced it so many times, Wes, but as founders of a startup and a small business, for better or for worse, you're always thinking about it, night and day. And so in spite of that time to celebrate, as soon as we woke up, we were both like, okay, how do we start attacking this step by step? What can we do to ensure that we, are framing ourselves to the best of our ability, putting our best foot forward as a business, and making sure that we are kind of capturing this audience that was going to come from Shark Tank. We'd actually done some research, if you remember, that said anywhere from 50,000 to 200,000 unique visitors will visit a Shark Tank website store over the course of the weekend after the air date.
Hold on, let's pause real quick right there and just reiterate those numbers. That is 50,000 to 100,000 unique visitors to a website in that weekend. That's
200,000.
200, that's banana.
Yeah.
Those are ridiculous numbers.
For sure. And that may be the norm for some other companies, but for our little business that has obviously grown quite a bit, that's still staggering, right? And I think it's super impressive. And what was cool about it, though, it didn't freak us out. I think it just lit a fire in us, right, Wes? That is what made us realize, hey, this is our moment to shine. Let's do the right things. Let's really level up ourselves and our business and everything we're doing across all aspects of the brand. And so we kind of itemized it, I think, in no particular order of, 4 or 5 categories of things we wanted to focus on. And that was our email marketing. It was our social media and the way in which we announce and creating a marketing calendar around that. Our PR for sure, and making sure that we're communicating with publications out there and doing interviews and making sure that people know who we are as a brand. Another important thing for us was inventory prep for sure, That I think is probably most important in a way. And lastly, it was about optimizing the website. So once we knew we had those categories of things, that's when we started attacking that list.
Yeah, and what's really cool is, Greg and I as co-founders have different lanes here. And we both kind of own those lanes and then utilize each other as like a checks and balance. And it's been really effective for us once we acknowledged that was the route we wanted to take as co-founders in a company. But we realized that in the beginning, when we first set up the company, we had email flows and email automation set up, but we kind of went through that as our first step to take because we haven't touched that in a long time. I mean, as founders, one of the things you always do is like you focus on something for a little bit, and then if it's working and it's not broken, you don't fix it, and you kind of keep letting it run its course. And we had come to the conclusion that email just hadn't been touched in a long time, and while we were still performing at industry standards, we wanted to capitalize on that moment of everyone coming to the website. And one thing Greg and I have been tackling in our brains for weeks and months now is this idea, do we do it ourselves? Do we hire someone who is a professional but just themselves as a freelancer, or do we go with an agency? And I think this was kind of like a critical juncture for us where we had to decide that that route we were going to take. And Greg, walk us through what we went through next and how we because that was the first thing we tackled, right? Like the email flow.
Exactly. And I think for us, we decided that it was time to change that mindset of like set it and forget it, because we had forgotten about it. And we talked so many times about like, okay, when is the time when we're going to update that? And it's funny because that's kind of a theme of a few different points on some of the things we fixed up over the past week and a half. But we realized that probably needed the most work, and that would also require the most time as well. So we thoughtfully decided to put that as the first item on the list. And what we did, we ended up realizing that, given our limited bandwidth and how many things we had to focus on, we could have done it ourselves, right? We certainly could have, but we would have just needed more time, I think. And obviously I have the skill set from the design. You are such a great copywriter, and I think when we come together on that, we could definitely make something work. But it was one of those moments where you and I were like, hey, look, I think we are okay on the funding. It's time for us to actually hire a pro who is really an expert in this, who knows about segmenting audiences, creating optimized flows in terms of a welcome series, a pop-up banner on your website, really all of those elements that contribute to a really effective email marketing campaign. And so we ended up utilizing the freelance site Upwork, as many of you may know. Really, really great resource for anything from design to, it could even be finance. You can find anyone on there. But basically, I ended up putting out a very specific job posting about the type of job we needed and the fact that it was going to be a 2-week sprint, and made those parameters very clear. And we got flooded with a ton of different options of really qualified people. So Wes and I, we had to wade through that, which took some time, but we knew we wanted to make a very quick hire. And luckily we ended up linking up with a guy who's based in LA, really like-minded individual, super cool, and has some really great experience. So we put our trust in him. And over the past week and a half, we've been working with him on generating an audit of our entire email marketing campaign to date, seeing how we've been doing compared with industry standards, and really just learning quite a bit. And actually, in the next day or so, we are expecting brand new email templates for our flows and whatnot. And really, like we said, just putting our best foot forward when it comes to email marketing. So that's pretty much what we had in mind when it came to email marketing. And once we knew we made that hire, we felt comfortable enough to just kind of let that professional, do his thing, give him the space. And that allowed us the time to focus on our next item, which, Wes, I would love for you to chat about. Obviously that was, social and the way in which we wanted to announce things. What was kind of our approach and your thought process since you were leading that part?
Yeah, it's funny, going back to email real quick, it's like you have to pick and choose your battles. And Greg and I, like the relief off our shoulders when we didn't have to worry about that, and we actually made like a smart decision. Like, it was great because then you can repurpose all your focus, since you wear so many hats as a founder, to like other things that were more important. And one of those things that Greg just brought up is social. I mean, with Shark Tank alone, so many people in this world know what it is that Greg and I knew the minute that we threw up a photo about it, because no one in the world really knew about this. Like, our social was going to blow up, and we prepared like as much as we could and as much time as they gave us for this announcement. And normally Greg and I have a running calendar of marketing stuff, and we normally do these shorter sprints anyways because there's only two of us, and this revolves around, you know, things like Father's Day or July 4th or just deals that we have, and especially in regards to launching new product. But one of the things that we had realized is not only do we need to make sure we do a correct announcement on social media about this, but we also needed to make sure that we had enough inventory in the back end. Because one of the things, we didn't assume we were going to get on Shark Tank. So Greg and I had created this entire spring and summer marketing plan with launching new product. We actually were on the right calendar for, you know, drops. And luckily, Greg and I, because of supply chain issues last year, over-ordered this year because we just didn't want to have to worry about it. And what we did is we had enough product that we were gonna release certain parts, certain colors throughout the year. And Greg and I had to make an executive decision that we realized that we didn't have enough inventory on the shelves for what was to come, and we wanted to give people coming to our site as many options as possible. So instead of doing a summer drop for one of the colors, we actually shifted and did it this past week. And it was definitely the shortest sprint in terms of a launch for a colorway we've ever done. But luckily we have such great friends and family supporting us that a couple of buddies came down to the beach with us. We did like a lifeguard shoot with our new brick red color, and it looked awesome, but it gave us enough content to both launch the product and announce Shark Tank in the same week, which kind of flooded a little bit of our normal social media like style, but it allowed us to launch a new color and allowed us to announce this. It actually worked out pretty great. And the cool part, which leads into like one of the other pillars Greg was talking about, is we now had new clean imagery for the website. And like, we needed to optimize this website because it hadn't been done in such a long time. And Greg actually, you know, once he passed off the email to Jack, he was actually able to focus on that while I was able to focus on the creative. So Greg, once we had those new imagery and everything like that, walk us through, because this is actually like a big deal, walk us through the process in which you went from the beginning, looking at our website, doing almost an internal audit of it, all the way to pressing live on this new update. Like, give me a flow of what you went through that entire upgrade for our website.
Like, I just kind of had this like aha moment of, wow, we're gonna get so much traffic and all these new eyes on our business. And we'd always talked about eventually upgrading the website, but it was always just like a loose conversation. And I just kind of realized like, this may be the moment, you know, we're sprinting everything else. Let's, again, I keep saying this, but put our best foot forward and make sure that the brand that we are and have grown into is kind of showcased for everyone who is seeing us on a stage as big as Shark Tank. So I just want to make sure everything was aligned, but it definitely was a huge lift for sure. And, you know, obviously there was some mutual hesitation because the timing, right? And let's talk about that real quick. Just kind of this idea like, hey, I want to completely upgrade our Shopify theme. I want to totally rebrand how we're framing ourselves on the website. And I want to push this thing live within like 4 or 5 days. You know, did that not freak you out?
Dude, yeah, and keep in mind, like, at all points, and this is the benefit of having co-founders, is like at all points, Greg and I have each other's back, but we always have, you know, opinions on a product. And it's great because we're both in different lanes, which allows us to have different opinions, but we always come to, you know, a specific conclusion. And this is one of those moments where Greg, from like the social aspect and like the optimized ops aspect, was like, dude, we got to get our website flowing. We got to get our like looking better. And he was so right. But in my brain, we about a year ago had an issue where we updated something with our website or an app, and then all of a sudden people were unable to purchase at checkout. And it was super small at that moment, but it still freaked me out that day. Now in my brain I was like, oh my God, what if something happens around Shark Tank in which we have 100,000 people to our site and upgrading didn't work? So, Greg made the right decision and we came to that conclusion, but it wasn't without doing due diligence and checks and balances. So Greg, walk us through how you really calmed me to make sure that we made the right decision.
I was ready to just dive right in, right? And that's just kind of me to a T a little bit. I just want to start tackling projects and then figure things out after the fact. But we realized, and had that conversation, like, let's actually, again, like we did with the email, let's talk to a professional and let's actually see, if we're doing the right thing, if this is, the timing isn't good, whatever. So I hopped on a pretty lengthy chat with one of the Shopify experts. We obviously, like I mentioned, use Shopify as our backend e-commerce platform. And the situation was that we have a very old theme, which is basically the front end of what you're seeing when you visit our website. But there's since we got the theme back in 2019 when we first started, there's since been like 6 or 7 upgrades. And so we had not upgraded over the entire 2 to 3 years. Not exactly sure why, but it is what it is. But this was the opportunity to do so. So hopped on the chat with them. The guy was so knowledgeable and really helpful. I grilled this guy, asked him like, are there any examples of like buggy websites when people upgrade within a theme after it's been, multiple upgrades? What happens if we upgrade and we don't like it? Can we revert? How does the app API and just general code, liquid code, work when you upgrade from theme to theme? And will everything sync properly? So got a lot of answers from him. He made us feel so much better about it because pretty much everything that we were hoping ended up being the case in terms of it being a very simple process, everything syncing over correctly, and it just being something that Shopify has done to just make it a seamless experience for a startup and e-commerce owner. So that really gave us the confidence to know that we were able to push forward. And that point, pretty much just started designing all the pages. Luckily there was some stuff that synced over from the previous theme, but either way I still had to recreate and redesign every single page on our website, like even the FAQ, the shopping pages, the checkout, everything from that standpoint. All different layouts are reconfigured because these new themes have more enhanced versions of that. So that was actually cool because I was able to just, like we said, level up and reframe us in a better way. But it was super time consuming. I think, well, you and I both, but I specifically was working literally 14-hour days all last week, Monday through Friday, just pumping out new content for this website and making sure everything looked good. But it was worth it, right? Like, I think we're both so stoked about how it looks now and the fact that orders are being processed and everything's running super smooth. All the apps and our reviews synced over, everything's golden. So a huge thank you to Shopify and their seamless experience there.
Yeah, and Greg is very good at putting these lanes in his head and doing these checks just by himself because he's super organized, which is why he runs like the whole ops side of our site. But one of the things from my standpoint, because I'm more idea in the clouds, but just to make sure that I was like calmed and okay with this, Greg kind of walked me through a couple big pillars and checkpoints. So like if you're optimizing or looking to upgrade your website, a couple things in my brain that were automatic like flags we need to like make sure we're checked were, 1, did we talk to a developer? 2, did we have the skills to be able to build out the site and upgrade it to the what we wanted it to look like? And did we have the content for that? 3, did any apps have any issues? Were any apps going to be too old of software or not enough upgraded? 4 would be actually pushing it live. And then 5, which is something that we didn't do in the past, which is actually testing it out and pushing through a couple orders. So once we were able to push through a couple orders afterwards, it was seamless and it made us feel totally good. And then we got orders coming in from people. So the website looks awesome. We felt really confident about it. And we had, at this point, we had Jack working on email, we had social being dialed, and photography for the website. The website was looking good, and one of our friends is actually helps in PR, and Lindsay just does an incredible job with us. So she's been working with us to make sure that we're ready and our talk track is ready for anything that can come up. So at this point, we are like pretty dialed in terms of getting prepared and what we want to do and say for Shark Tank, which is really cool because obviously tomorrow is when it airs. We're recording this beforehand, but it allowed Greg and I to kind of reminisce a little bit. We have to take ourselves out sometimes, and as founders, I suggest you guys do that, entrepreneurs. It's so easy to get bogged down in the details and the tasks, but taking yourselves out every now and then is like insanely important to realize like where you've come. But Greg, like for those people who are watching specifically because we're on Shark Tank and want to know a little bit more about the process, like what was that day like for you? I mean, for me, it was such a blur, and I'll go into it, but like us prepping and getting ready, like what was that day like for you when we actually recorded for Shark Tank?
That day was so crazy, Wes. I mean, it was very much a blur, I would say. And really it started with a super early wake-up call. Mind you, this is after the night before, where it was the first time we've seen each other in like a year because of COVID and everything too. We've been doing so much virtually, and that was just cool to even see each other as best buds. But we just had to jump straight into script rehearsal and just up in our hotel room, just pacing in some Marriott, and acting this out time after time. But it was really cool because I think it was a culmination of so much preparation, and we both felt super confident in our tonality, everything that we had rehearsed and all the stuff that we practiced. So that day, in spite of the fact that our heart rates were like the highest they've ever been, like pounding out of our chest, it was such a crazy moment because I think both of us ended up having this kind of confident and calm wash over us when we were actually on the big stage, just because again, we're both so prepared, right?
Yeah, I think the over preparation that you and I always do is actually played to our benefit this time, rather than us being like over anxious or overdoing something when no one normally would care or notice it. But this was really awesome. I had almost this weird out-of-body experience when we were actually on Shark Tank, where I could like see myself talking. I felt super weird, but like my brain was just on autopilot because we had gone through every possible question and answer the night before. I mean, first off, that set is crazy. It's as it looks on TV. Like the lights are hot, you're just there and nervous. You're talking to these like TV celebrities and actual business people who are incredible, and like you're actually, all that hard work has culminated to this like moment, and you're like, we were both looking at each other like, oh, this is real. It was such a wild experience. But one of the craziest thing, like you just said, is we were so prepared. I mean, and I remember eating that horrible cheeseburger in that Marriott, just grilling each other with questions. Just like I had a lot of the finance questions pretty dialed in, and Greg and I split up the marketing stuff, and then Greg had all the operations. I mean, the over preparation in that was crazy.
For sure, I think that was probably the big thing that made us feel so confident about the entire situation, because we knew that we didn't want to be those people up there who were blanking on questions or stumbling over lines, or just looking like they didn't believe in their own product, right? And we're such big believers, like we know this inside out, and we kept telling ourselves that. And so after we were first contacted by the Shark Tank team around the same time last year, what ensued was actually 8 months of prep work. Everything from financing documentation to script writing, looking deep dives into our own numbers and analytics about our customer base, sales, our marketing spend. I mean, you name it. And we'd always talked about doing this kind of analysis, Wes, but we just obviously we never had the time. It's 2 people. When are we going to be able to do this? But it was kind of cool that it was like a positive forced thing for us, because we learned so much about the business. We learned so much about our customers, you guys, who really dig our products. I think that was one of the coolest things, and you know, it really brought us a lot closer, man. I think that that is one experience that you just cannot say you had with anyone else unless it's exactly that Shark Tank experience. And so I think it was really good for us as friends and business partners, but especially for the brand as well.
Dude, perfectly said. Well, we're super excited for everyone watching that has supported us over the past, years. Funny enough, Greg and I celebrated, over FaceTime yesterday. Yesterday was our 3-year anniversary of being a brand, and we both didn't even really realize because we were prepping for this week. But at this point, you guys have probably already seen it. So to everyone who's been supporting us since day one, 3 years ago, thank you so much. If you're brand new to just finding out about DRIFTLINE, there is a lot coming that's going to be really exciting. We are, if nothing, we're innovative, and we always try and stay on our toes. But yeah, thanks for supporting, and we're going to talk about inventory here in a second. And at this point, we haven't seen it yet, so I'm excited to see what's going to come. But thanks everyone for tuning in.
What's up, you guys? It is the day after our Shark Tank episode aired, and we are so stoked at the amazing response from all of you guys, friends, family, all of our loyal and new customers. We truly appreciate all the support from you guys. If you didn't get to watch yet, make sure you head to ABC or Hulu to watch our episode 23, and check us out, see how we did in the tank. Again, thank you guys so much. Stay tuned for our next vlog. We are going to be telling you guys a little bit more about our post-airing experience, how it impacted our sales, how we packaged all these orders, and just make sure you stay tuned because we will be having some cool new updates in the coming weeks. Thanks so much again. Cheers, you guys.